Myanmar's anti-coup protesters returned to the streets defying the military junta. In this edition, we hear from the UN's Special Rapporteur on Human Rights for the country. Brazil's federal authorities launch new COVID restrictions to battle a second wave. Despite 2 consecutive days of record deaths, President Bolsonaro tells Brazilians to stop whining. And New Zealand's authorities give tsunami evacuees the green light to return home, downgrading threat levels after an 8.1 earthquake strikes the South Pacific Ocean. Those were your headlines. You're watching France 24 with me, Yeneli. Let's start this news update in Myanmar, where another day of anti-coup protests has wrapped up. Thousands of people line the streets in multiple cities despite the police's increasingly violent crackdowns. Police again used tear gas and gunfire to clamp down on civil disobedience. There's been growing international condemnation, but little concrete action against the country's military junta. The UN Security Council is set to discuss Myanmar again on Friday. Earlier, we spoke to Tom Andrews. He's the international body's Special Rapporteur on Human Rights for the country.
First of all, there's been universal condemnation of the horror that we're seeing before our very eyes in Myanmar, which is an important first step. But there are action steps that need to be taken. First of all, sanctions, focused, coordinated, tough sanctions, not only on individuals, but also the business interests of the Myanmar military need to be hit. We need to have asset freezes wherever we can, strong, tough, working together sanctions from the international community. A global arms embargo will also be very important to stop the flow of arms into the hands of the generals. And I'd like to see the Security Council make a reference of this horror to the International Criminal Court, so that the court can investigate, they can prosecute, and those who are responsible for these atrocities that we're watching day by day will be held fully accountable. We all know that China has, for many years, been a defender of Myanmar in the Security Council. The threat of their veto has certainly made action by the Security Council impossible in many instances. They also provide Myanmar generals with their weapons and with trade and investment. They're a very, very important player in all of this. But listen, China does not want a conflagration right over their border. They believe that stability is extremely important, particularly in the region. It's certainly in the interest of business. And so this is something that is of their direct interest. And what I've seen from China and spokespeople from the Chinese government have been encouraging. We've seen a condemnation of the actions that we've been seeing. We've seen a call for the release of all political prisoners and a peaceful resolution to the crisis. So these are messages that we're hearing, all of us can hear from China, which I think is encouraging, and I'm hoping that that also portends even stronger language privately. But the bottom line is that China has a great deal of interest here. They're making some important messages. They're getting important messages across, and I'm hoping that indicates that China could be part of the solution. If not Friday, tomorrow in the Security Council, soon.
To Brazil next, where regional authorities have been ramping up coronavirus restrictions just after the country recorded its biggest single-day death toll on Wednesday. Rio de Janeiro is the latest city to introduce new measures. A curfew is being put into place, but beaches are set to remain open. James Vicina has the details.
It's an attempt at avoiding the worst. A day after Brazil recorded over 1,900 deaths from COVID-19, the highest figure since the start of the pandemic, authorities in Rio de Janeiro are pressing pause on summer life in the city for the next 2 weeks.
The numbers for Rio in terms of deaths and infections are still manageable. But today's announcement comes with only one objective, which is to avoid a situation similar to last year.
While beaches will remain open in the country's second biggest city, restaurants and bars will be required to close at 5 p.m. Residents will be forbidden to gather after 11 and ordered to stay indoors until 5 in the morning.
It will have a direct impact on the pub's earnings because our busiest days are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it could bring unemployment and maybe even close the business.
It will be very difficult for me because I depend on my sales to pay my debts. I don't know how I'm going to get by.
The announcement comes as President Jair Bolsonaro, who'd previously attempted to lift state lockdowns, appeared to tell residents to get over the pandemic.
Stop this fussing and whining. How long will you keep crying? We have to face the problems.
While 9 million people have now received at least one dose of the vaccine, a new variant of the COVID-19 virus has now spread over half of Brazil and could be part of the reason for the recent surge in cases. Intensive care units, meanwhile, are almost full in over half of the country's states.
New COVID restrictions are also on the horizon here in France, but only for residents of Pas-de-Calais. The northern region is the third area to be singled out for tighter COVID restrictions. It will go under weekend lockdown, following in the footsteps of the French Riviera and Dunkirk. Julia Kim reports.
With the infection rate at almost twice the national average, the region around the Channel Coast city of Calais has been slapped with new restrictions.
La première est d'étendre.
Firstly, we're extending the weekend lockdown in Nice and Dunkirk to the whole of the Nord-Pas-de-Calais department.
À Nice et à Dunkerque.
As in neighbouring Dunkirk and the French Riviera, 1.4 million residents in France's north will be confined to their homes from 8 a.m. Saturday. With the exception of supermarkets, shopping centres larger than 5,000 square metres will have to close. Nationwide, there are now 23 high-risk departments after Prime Minister Jean Castex added Aisne, Aube and the Hautes-Alpes to the list. There, shopping malls larger than 10,000 metres squared will close their doors, and well-frequented hotspots may be banned to the public. As France avoids a nationwide lockdown again, the government has promised to massively speed up its vaccination campaign.
D'ici mi-mai, nous devrions avoir vacciné au moins 20
By
millions
mid-May, we will have vaccinated around 20 million people, meaning almost everyone aged 50 and over who wishes to get vaccinated. And by summer, we will have received enough doses to offer vaccinations to 30 million people. That's two-thirds of those over 18.
Pharmacists will be able to administer the jab from mid-March. The government has confirmed it will receive triple the number of doses. That's over 20 million vaccines in time for spring.
Italy has blocked a shipment of COVID vaccines destined for Australia. AstraZeneca requested permission to export 250,000 doses from a factory near Rome. Italian authorities rejected the demand, citing the continued shortage of vaccines for the EU. Rome has the backing of the European Commission, as our Brussels correspondent Dave Keating explains.
We had kind of an indication that this was coming because at last week's vaccine summit, Mario Draghi, the new Italian prime minister, told the other leaders, I'm told, that he wanted the EU to use this mechanism, that he believed that it was necessary to get tough with AstraZeneca now in order to make sure that AstraZeneca meets its second quarter deliveries. In other words, the EU needed to show that it wasn't afraid to use this mechanism. Now, you might think it's strange that Italy is blocking exports of a vaccine, which right now it's only using, I think, about a third of the supplies that it has. But it's because they're not concerned about the supply situation right now. They're concerned about the second quarter. There were reports that AstraZeneca will also fall short in its delivery schedule in the second quarter, in addition to right now in the first quarter. So the idea is that this kind of extracts a guarantee from AstraZeneca now that they will meet that schedule.
And finally, authorities in New Zealand have downgraded a tsunami threat, telling thousands of evacuees they can now return home. Beaches and shore areas, though, remain off limits. Earlier in the day, several powerful earthquakes struck the South Pacific, triggering tsunami alerts for multiple islands. Alexander Orcott has the story.
Residents on New Zealand's North Island now allowed to return home as the threat level is downgraded. Officials had warned of tsunami waves up to 3 meters high, but the strongest of the waves have now passed without incident. People were shaken awake by a powerful earthquake in the middle of the night, and heeding the advice, if it's long or strong, get gone, tens of thousands headed for the hills.
No, it woke me up. I jumped out of bed and stood in the doorway, and most of the house was up as well, so it was quite strong and it took forever to stop. It's been crazy, there's people everywhere, but it's nice to know that people have actually taken the initiative to get up and leave without being told to.
It seems reasonably strong, but yeah, I suppose it's trying to work out whether is it long and strong enough to warrant evacuating.
It was strong, but it wasn't too strong, but we did still evacuate just in case.
Tsunami alert warnings were given after each quake. The largest, 8.1 magnitude, struck 1,000 kilometres off New Zealand's north coast, following two earlier tremors measuring 7.4 and 7.3, an unusually strong cluster for the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire, where the Earth's tectonic plates collide. New Zealand recently marked the 10th anniversary of the Christchurch earthquake, the 6.3 magnitude tremor that resulted in 185 deaths in the South Island city.
That's it from all of us in the newsroom for now. Stay with us, though. The debate with François Picard is up next. Ahead of the papal visit to Iraq, he's asking his panel of guests what future lies ahead for Christians in the Middle East.